Broadcasting from Manhattan Beach and the World Wide Web, you're listening to CHSR, HealthyLife.net.
Hello, and welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Lindsay Gannon, and you are listening to the Calm Coach Radio, where every month I do my best to bring you natural solutions to improve your mental health and gain relief from conditions like anxiety and depression. So if you've dealt with either of these conditions, if someone you with anxiety or depression right now, please stay tuned. On today's show, I'm going to tell my story and how I gained relief from severe anxiety. I'm going to share with you some simple tips so you can gain relief if you are dealing with anxiety, and I will be here to answer your questions at the end of the show. I have an amazing guest lineup this year of experts on stress and anxiety and mental health, so get ready. I hope you're excited. I know I am. I can't wait to bring you this amazing information. Now, there is an incredible connection between the body and the mind that we don't really acknowledge a whole lot, but it's that connection that's really key to understanding why now more than ever we feel stressed, we feel overwhelmed, jittery, nervous, anxious. We just don't feel like ourselves. And I talk to women who feel so tired all of the time. You know, they can barely get out of bed in the morning. They just don't have the energy to do it. They need a nap by noon, and they feel like they're going to collapse by 7 or 8 at night. I talk to women who have brain fog, who have severe fatigue, all impacting their mental health. I talk to women who feel depressed, who have bouts of anxiety, sometimes severe anxiety. They have a hard time remembering things. They feel distracted. The list goes on and on. And many women out there, I know because I hear it all of the time, they're dealing with physical symptoms like insomnia, where you wake up in the middle of the night with a racing heart or racing thoughts. A lot of women have ringing in the ears, and they can't fall back to sleep. And we call this anxiety because our mental state is impacted, right? All of a sudden, we're up late at night thinking things that we don't want to think about. I know a lot of women who are dealing with panic attacks that seem to get worse when their mind runs out of control. But what is going on with the mind is really a reflection of what is going on in the body. And sometimes we release stress signals as a way for our body to communicate that something isn't right. And like I always say, many of these conditions are made worse by biological factors. I mean, if you really think about it, your body is made up of living organisms. There's trillions of them. And when these living organisms aren't happy because maybe they aren't getting what they need or they're constantly in a state of stress, you're going to feel the effects of that both physically and mentally. So the good news is that there are ways, if you or someone you know or someone you love is dealing with anxiety, that you or they can feel better fast. I mean, whether it's changing your diet and eliminating certain foods that might trigger anxiety, which we're going to get into a little bit later, or bringing in calming foods that nourish the brain and nourish the nervous system, or bringing in herbs and supplements that help with anxiety. Or, maybe you take an honest look at how you are treating your body and what you're putting into your body, or, what you're putting on your body, because what goes on your body goes in your body. Anywhere from, I think they say, 20 to 100%. That's 20% to 100% of what you put on your skin gets absorbed. Then your tissue may store what gets absorbed, and this is how toxins build up in the body, and this can impact your mental health. Now, the toxic load within your body at any given time is referred to as body burden. Again, that's body burden, because your body is basically forced to deal with or kind of try to get rid of all of these substances throughout the day, and that can be a lot of work, and it can make you feel really tired too. So, for example, think about this for a minute. Are you using deodorant with aluminum in it? This is huge. And putting aluminum on your skin, well, you may as well be ingesting it. And anxiety and other health problems can come about from aluminum toxicity. And, hey, maybe you don't buy into this idea. Like, I talk to some people, and they're like, I've been using deodorant for years. I don't believe that that's the source of the problem. And, in fact, large companies pay a lot of money to debunk the idea of aluminum toxicity so that they can keep selling you their deodorants and antiperspirants. But guess what else is in there? In many deodorants and antiperspirants, you'll find things like parabens, You have ingredients that have been linked to things like decreasing levels of thyroid hormones. There are even known skin irritants, known carcinogens. You've got petroleum, artificial colors and fragrances, and a whole lot more. And all of those things are getting absorbed and potentially stored somewhere in the body. Then, if you think about what you use to nourish your skin, ladies, please, please, please read the ingredient labels of the products you use. All of the creams and the lotions and the face products. When you're at the store going down the aisle and you're just kind of bombarded, I guess, with all of the different choices. And you pick up a bottle or you pick up a tube and you kind of take the time to read what's in there. Now, as a general rule of thumb, if there are ingredients that you can't pronounce, I would say put it back. Like, don't even waste your time. It's just not worth it. There are good, wholesome products out there that you can use to replace all of the garbage. Just look for a product line that uses all natural ingredients, things like herbs, plants, purified water. Just ask yourself, would you be okay eating it? Because you put it on your skin, it's going in your body, right? So try to look at small batch versus big batch. That's small batch, also known as micro batch, versus big batch. And what this means is basically you're buying from companies who invest a little bit more of their time and thought into making smaller batches of products, as opposed to big companies who just mass produce everything. And just think about it this way. The less toxins you introduce to your body, the better your physical and mental health will be. There's numerous steps you can take that will allow you to improve your mental state and gain relief from things like anxiety and depression. And we can't, unfortunately, get into all of them today, and goodness, I'm still learning. But I will do my best to bring you new information every month and to answer your questions about anxiety and mental health. But, just thinking about it, overall, a reasonable goal for any person might sound something like, I want to be more conscious. I want to be more conscious. When you live consciously, you are aware of everything you do. You're aware of everything you eat or ingest. You're aware of everything you say. And you become more and more aware of how you think and how your choices impact your life. So the more conscious you become, the better your mental state. So when I look at mental health and I look at anxiety, I try to look at the whole person. I try to understand, what is really going on internally or physiologically. I try to understand what might be going on for them psychologically, even spiritually, what their lifestyle is like. I get a bit of their history. I try to determine what their exact needs are, if I can help them or who can help them. And it might sound like a lot to look at or a lot of information to collect in the beginning, but people are diverse. We're not like these unidimensional beings. And most of us don't think in a linear fashion either. We're actually kind of complicated. And everyone's anxiety is different and comes about for different reasons. Things happen to us. We get hurt. We get traumatized, in addition to how we treat our bodies. So I try to take all of those things into account when I work with women and when I decide what to bring to this show. So I hope that this show can help you do just that. I hope it can help you find simple things you can do starting today to improve your mental health. And I also plan on bringing guest experts on the show who I think can really help with understanding the body-mind connection, and how this relates to good mental health and healing from conditions like anxiety. So next month we have a guest who is very well known in the alternative health world and who I consider a great expert on conditions like anxiety and depression, and he's going to be here to introduce his latest course on stress. So don't forget to tune in next month. The very first Friday of the month. It's going to be awesome. You definitely don't want to miss that show. Just glancing at my calendar here, that is November 2nd. First Friday of November is November 2nd. And, if one person listening in finds one way to change their lives and gain relief from anxiety, then you know what? It's worth it for me, because there are so many people out there right now dealing with the condition of anxiety, and most of them have tried different things, and they haven't found any relief. So they say something like, I think 1 in 5 Americans are dealing with an anxiety condition at any given time, and I honestly think that number is probably higher. I believe it's much higher for women especially, and no one should have to live like that. So my mission is to help all women learn how to gain relief from anxiety while gaining extensive clarity on how to heal their own body and mind. Because I know the value of being able to walk away with a few answers and be able to make some small changes to get to feeling better. I mean, that's kind of what it's all about, right? Making some simple shifts every day or every week or every month that allow your body and thus your mind to feel better, to function better, to feel more joy and feel less stress. And if you're living with anxiety, I hope to offer these answers to you every single month. So today I'm going to share my story with you on how I found relief from severe anxiety. And my own anxiety journey dates back to childhood, especially adolescence, when I began having panic attacks, and I even had anxiety seizures. And I was so fascinated with my own anxiety that I wanted to become a psychiatrist and learn how the brain really works. So when I first started at USF down here in Florida, I was actually pre-med. A few years into it, I became a little bit disillusioned with this idea, and I switched to an undergrad in psychology. I went on to get a master's in mental health, a doctorate in counseling. I later became a licensed therapist, and I've worked with hundreds of people who suffer from anxiety and or depression. I've worked with women, men, children, couples, families, you name it. And I know a lot of people who dealt with anxiety symptoms for years. They went to counseling or they've tried all different types of medications. And while they did feel better maybe for a short while, the anxiety, it always seemed to come back. It always returned, or it never left to begin with. And I'm here to tell you that you don't have to live like that. You don't need to live with anxiety like this day in and day out, because if we're really honest with ourselves, it wears on you after a while. It may begin to impact your relationships, or it may begin to impact your energy stores, your energy levels, where you're left feeling depleted or like you have nothing left to give anyone. You might feel drained. You might feel overwhelmed just getting out of bed in the morning. And again, it doesn't have to be like that. So I had my first full-blown panic attack at the age of 16 inside of a grocery store, and I remember it very clearly. I was just standing there in the checkout line when my heart started to race, the room started to spin. Honestly, I thought I was dying, so that's kind of a scary thing for a 16-year-old. Then by age 18, I had the label of generalized anxiety, and by the age of 20, I had the label of cervical dystonia. So for those who are listening and maybe don't know or haven't heard of cervical dystonia, it's a neurological disorder that basically causes the muscles in the neck to contract involuntarily, and this can cause the head to move, from side to side, or like mine turns to the left. And these symptoms can get worse from anxiety or cold or stress, all sorts of stuff. And we will definitely do a show at some point on neurological disorders and how this relates to mental health in the future. And maybe we can even get someone like a neurological expert on the show. I think that would help a lot of people. So back then, I was sort of like a pack of processed meat, just getting labeled and relabeled and sort of moving across or over this conveyor belt. And while the labels did help in making me feel like I could kind of justify the symptoms I was having, they didn't help very much in the long term. They didn't help me get better. So I didn't feel any better. Knowing that I had an anxiety diagnosis or a dystonia diagnosis, and none of the labels I got ever offered an answer or a path toward healing. So most of the time it was, here, take a few of these pills, or maybe inject this substance into the muscle to deaden it, that sort of thing. So the overall message that I got at a very young age was, we need to turn your symptoms off. And that's a very dangerous message to give and receive, because it's more complicated than that. and you don't want to mask symptoms that are trying to tell you something, right? So needless to say, anxiety held me back in a lot of ways. On the one hand, though, it taught me how to heal myself, because ultimately I ended up taking anxiety into my own hands. And, when I say that, I don't really mean I did it alone. I just stepped away from practical advice, I guess. I started to learn how to use my inner guidance to make the right choices. I guess it would kind of be fair to say that I stepped away from Western medicine, not intentionally. It just sort of worked out that way because I was desperate for help. I was desperate for answers. And for what I was dealing with, conventional medicine wasn't really getting me much of anywhere. So I ended up working with these amazing people. I worked with naturopaths, past life workers, energy workers, intuitive healers. It was honestly like all of the right people came into my life at the exact right time. And it's really incredible how that happens when you take accountability and you seek real help. You invite true healing into your life, and I've seen it happen with so many people. They say finally, I'm not finding any answers. I'm not looking for a Band-Aid. I want to really feel better. And now when anxiety pops up for me, or I'm, say, dissatisfied with my own mental state, I feel fairly confident in what I need to do to feel better. And guess what? If I can't get past it, and say I feel bad for more than a few weeks, or if I go through a traumatic event, which we all have trauma, I go and I talk to someone right away. There are amazing people out there in the helping profession, and sometimes people get surprised, like, oh, you're a counselor and you go to counseling. Well, yeah, right, I do, absolutely. I absolutely do, because I deserve to feel well. We all do. I know that sounds kind of weird when you say that out loud, like I deserve something good, but it's the truth. Don't let yourself go through motions and get to feeling worse and worse. Reach out for help when you need it. There's plenty of help out there. So needless to say, anxiety is near and dear to my heart. It's basically what I know. It's what I'm good at. And it's what I'm passionate about because I've been through it. I know just how bad it can get, and I've worked with women suffering from anxiety for a very long time now. People get surprised again to hear that I still deal with anxiety. It's not gone. It didn't go anywhere. I still deal with it every day. It doesn't rule my life like it used to, and I feel very confident that I know how to address it. So thinking back not very long ago, I even had severe postpartum anxiety after both of my sons, and, they're 8 years apart. My son now is only a few months shy of 2 years old, so it wasn't that long ago that severe anxiety returned for me, and that's a whole show in and of itself. So I had to get out all of my tools, and I had to ask for help again from my people, and that's okay. Like, we're human, right? We all go through these sort of things, and we all deal with human stuff. So I wonder if you all would like to have a show on postpartum anxiety and depression. If so, please email me at lindsay@omgoddess.com. That's LINDSAY @AUMGODDESS.com, and let me know, and I'll be sure to plan a show. I'll invite an expert to speak on this. It's such an important topic, and it doesn't really get talked about enough. So let me know if you want to hear about that, because I want this show to be yours. Email me your ideas. I want to hear all of them. But very basically, that's how I started working with women with anxiety. I deeply care for these women, these people I've worked with, men and children too. Anxiety causes a lot of suffering. It keeps us from being our true selves. It kept me from being my true self. But we need to start talking about this more. And I don't mean anxiety in general, because the term gets thrown around a lot. I think we need to start having more conversations around what anxiety is and how to get better, understanding the body and mind connection a bit more, which is happening. I hear the language changing. I see resources popping up, because women need to know that there are things they can do right now to start feeling better. So just remember to take an honest look at how you are treating your body, or what you're putting into your body or on your body, like we talked about earlier. lean towards living more consciously, being aware of your actions, and then eventually when you're feeling better, work toward things like meditation and going inward to do some additional work. All of these things together, they're going to help you to gain relief from anxiety. They say that if you can take the body out of a state of stress for 30 days, that's just 30 days, miraculous healing begins to happen, and that is an important aim to have, 30 days. It kind of gives the body an opportunity to start dealing with some other things when you take it out of a state of stress. You give the body and the different bodily systems an opportunity to address things like toxic buildup or the burden that we talked about earlier. And reducing stress and anxiety by tending to the body and mind is key. So we are going to take a very short break, and when we get back, we are going to get into some very specific tips that you can use right now, starting today, to gain relief from anxiety. So please don't go anywhere. Stay tuned, and we will be right back. So if you're dealing with anxiety, like we talked about earlier, you're really, really going to know it. You're going to say, yep, that's it, because it's the physicalness of it. You're going to have things like ringing in the ears or racing heart or dry mouth. You might have things like itching that gets worse at night. You might have panic attacks, which are horrible, difficulty driving, headache, tightness in the chest, restless legs, dizziness. I could go on and on. It's all those types of things that make this type of anxiety different or special. So first and foremost, you're going to want to focus on the body and get the body well. Now, I always say that no one wants to meditate when they're having panic attacks. So in the same sense, no one wants to monitor their thoughts in a journal when they aren't sleeping, or say they're dealing with hundreds of physical symptoms that are just driving them mad. So in order to gain relief from anxiety, the focus should really be on the body, at least in the very beginning, and some very simple practices such as self-acceptance or self-compassion. Again, that's self-acceptance or self-compassion. So first, ask yourself whether you are hydrated. What are you drinking during the day and how much? This is so important, because if your cells get dehydrated, guess what? They can't do their job, and you can bet that you will start experiencing some of those symptoms that we talked about above. Drinking enough water each day is crucial for many reasons. It regulates body temperature. It may keep your joints lubricated. It prevents things like infections. It delivers nutrients to your cells, and it keeps organs functioning properly. So being well hydrated also improves sleep quality, cognition, and, you guessed it, mood. And we used to think, I heard it said all the time, that 8-ounce servings of water a day was enough. And I always tried to count, okay, I've had my first cup, I've had my second cup, and I've got my third glass, all the way up to 8 by, say, maybe 6 at night or something like that. But universities like Harvard are actually now recommending 11 cups of water per day for women. And that number jumps to 16 cups a day for men. So that's 11 cups, 8-ounce servings of water a day. And not just any water. I don't want you to think that we're talking about tap water or bottled water. We're really talking about living water, because a lot of our water has been filtered so much that it is dead. It's still good water because maybe it doesn't have the fluoride, or it doesn't have things like heavy metals in it that come from tap water, but it's missing key minerals. And therefore, you may become mineral deficient if you keep drinking this water. And guess what? Another major cause of anxiety is mineral deficiency. So there you go. And we could do a whole show on that, but for now, just be sure that you are adding life and minerals to your water. Make sure you're drinking the 11 cups a day. This turns out to be a game changer for many women who never realized that they were, say, magnesium deficient, or never realized that they were zinc deficient, or deficient in a whole host of minerals. They start drinking water with lemon in it first thing in the morning. Maybe they throw in a few drops of some ionic trace minerals. That's ionic trace minerals. And it goes in and it flushes the liver, but it also makes its way up to the brain, and it kind of just cools the brain off, it cools the nervous system, and it nourishes your body systems and your organs too. Then, they start eating foods with more minerals, less processed stuff, and more mineral-based foods like spinach or, say, bananas, or maybe they make a large glass of celery juice or cucumber juice first thing in the morning, and all of a sudden they're restoring the balance in their bodies, and their metabolism goes up, and they have more energy, and they feel better overall. Their mental state improves, anxiety improves, all from this one thing, and I think that's just incredible because it's a very simple shift. So, there are certain nutrients that actually act as a spark plug. If you think about electricity and how the neurobiological pathways communicate with one another, they're vital functions for the brain and other organs. So deficiencies in vitamins, minerals, things like amino acids and omega-3s, these things can all be associated with a higher prevalence of mood disorders. So, for example, zinc and magnesium, both zinc and magnesium are indirectly associated with memory functions. They are associated with learning and even psychosis, while folate, B12, B6, and riboflavin are essential cofactors for the synthesis of neurotransmitters. So when women get to feeling better, then they're convinced, too, that their anxiety was coming up because of that alarm system we talked about. The body just needed some attention was all. In addition to that, 50% of the immune system resides in the gut, and 90% of serotonin lives in the gut. So that's according to recent research. Therefore, healthy gut equals healthy mind, right? And again, we think around 50 to 70 thoughts every day. Can you imagine? 50 to 70 thoughts, 70,000 thoughts every single day. So it can kind of be overwhelming for someone to make this the focus in the beginning. How on earth are you going to become aware of and monitor all of those thoughts, let alone change them and feel better quickly? So add to that the fact that your body and your bodily symptoms are driving you mad, and you really have a recipe for failure. So that is why the body gets attention first. We nourish the body, the mind, get it back on track, and those are the types of daily practices that can really help those who are dealing with anxiety. I'll be honest with you, I was doing an interview the other day with a popular mental health radio show, and I'm not going to mention any names, but the person who was interviewing me, she kept asking me to talk about trauma and how trauma causes anxiety. And I get it. I know the popular belief in mental health is that we should focus 100% on what happened to people because trauma is significant, and it can cause mental health issues when we're holding on to the past and, any horrible thing that happened to us. But ask yourself this. Why is it that we all react in different ways? Why does resilience vary from person to person? This is kind of a big deal because I don't think you can really answer this question without talking about our biological makeup. I just don't think that's possible. So, I think that we need to change our focus and change our shift our focus a little bit on that. Because we kind of get disconnected along the way somewhere in the Western world or in Western society. So we're kind of focusing on the body, we're bringing in aspects of the mind, but we're looking at the whole person. So stay tuned. We're going to be back right after these messages, and I am going to answer all of your questions next. Welcome back, and thank you again for tuning in. So I want to take the next part of the show to answer questions, and thank you to everyone who was kind enough to email your questions ahead of time. If you have a question about anxiety, please share. It's really likely that there are others out there who have the same question or maybe a related question. So you won't only be helping yourself get to the answer, you'll be helping others, and I think that's pretty cool. So just send your question or your questions to Lindsay at omgoddess.com. That's LINDSAY at AUMGODDESS.com. And I will do my very best to answer your question on air or respond to your email. Questions are 100% confidential. That means, I will never say where the question originated. I won't say your name. I won't say your state or anything like that. So please feel comfortable to ask anything. You can also post questions on my Facebook page. That's Om Goddess Online, or facebook.com/AUMGODDESS Online, ONLINE. So one question I got more than once this month was, is there anything that should be avoided when you're dealing with anxiety? And, some were asking about whether there were certain foods to stay away from in particular. So I'm not going to insult anyone's intelligence by telling you that things like coffee or alcohol can worsen your anxiety. I'm sure you probably already know that. Coffee, of course, is a stimulant, not to mention how easy it is to become dependent on coffee or reliant on it to get that boost in the morning and maybe again in the afternoon. So for those who are into or maybe have studied Eastern medicine, coffee is just one of those things where you're kind of borrowing chi. And chi, we know, is life force or energy. So anything that gives you more energy in the now, like a stimulant, is going to cost you energy down the road, whether that's in the form of an illness or maybe fatigue or some sort of struggle. Not to mention that coffee itself is no longer a plant. If you look into how we process coffee and how we drench coffee in pesticide, you're not even really getting coffee anymore. Alcohol is the same, except, of course, it is a depressant. And any substance that either speeds the heart up or slows the heart down in such a way, it's really going to make anxiety worse. And you need more than ever, you need balance. So anyway, you may be shocked to learn that gluten can cause anxiety. It can also cause brain fog. It can cause headaches. It can cause, for a lot of people, it causes digestive issues. I've heard it cause hair loss and a whole host of other problems. So, and did you know that when you are experiencing stress or anxiety, you might actually produce less HCl? That's HCl. You might produce less in your gut. Up to 50% less HCl is produced. That's a pretty dramatic number just from being stressed out. And this is what helps us digest our food. So even dairy is a fear-producing food. You can become addicted to dairy the same way that you can become dependent on coffee or alcohol. And I'm always talking about Neil Bernard. He's the president of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and he talks about how casein is one of the main ingredients in dairy. Casein actually has opiate molecules built in, so you may just consider cutting back a bit to start. Like, cut back on dairy if you're eating a lot of cheese or you're drinking a lot of milk. Try to cut that back. There are numerous milk alternatives nowadays that you can buy. There's almond milk, there's coconut milk, there's cashew milk. I'm just thinking, you should really stay away from soy, as it comes with its own set of problems, and it's not necessarily like a healthy dairy alternative. But just steer clear of foods like this. Stay away from alcohol. Stay away from coffee. Stay away from dairy and soy. Add to that list maybe things like corn or any GMO foods that could disrupt the body. Keep out the gluten or limit the gluten where you can. Try to eat more living foods. Spend more time in the produce section when you go to the grocery store and learn how to read the ingredient labels on packaged food. That is so, so important. But just cutting back on these foods, it can do it can do amazing things for anxiety. It can really, really calm the body systems down. So I sincerely hope that that answers your question. I can go on and on about this topic, but I get this question all the time because I think people get a sense that they are probably eating something that's causing anxiety or making it worse, and they start making these links. And it may take 10 years or 20 years for a person to realize that they are allergic to certain foods. Maybe not allergic to the food itself, but allergic to the way it's processed or added pesticides or GMOs. And when you're eating something that is upsetting your cells, again, you're going to feel that effect. You're going to feel it physically and you're going to feel it mentally. And a lot of these foods cause anxiety to come about. So I have clients who eventually figure out what foods they need to stay away from. But generally, it's best to stay away from all of these foods, every single one of them that we talked about, because they don't do anything positive for you. They kind of go in and just wreak havoc on the body. And even if they offer some nutrition, I think that fact is sort of overridden, I guess, by the fact that it hurts you. The food actually does damage. So I know a lot of people come to me and they say, well, soy has protein and it has all kinds of vitamins like vitamin B2 and magnesium and potassium. But, it's like, hey, you can get that from other foods that don't hurt you in the process. So, bring in some spirulina and see how that changes your mood. Spirulina is excellent, and it can replenish a lot of what you may be missing, and it does it right away, so you can feel better. It's a superfood, and we could do a whole show on spirulina and the wonderful superfoods that come from our oceans that are loaded with minerals and vitamins, probably the majority of which we may not even be able to classify quite yet, but, that's the thing. These are all natural solutions to anxiety, and they are empowering. It is empowering to know what foods you need to stay away from, what foods to bring in, and when you start to feel better, you start to notice these changes, like you're probably able to stay asleep longer. That's a big one. When you start noticing, hey, I don't feel as anxious today, that's really cool. Getting back into hobbies, things you love, spending time with your kids, all those sorts of things you're able to start focusing on when you feel better. So I have one more question to go, but first we're going to take a very short break, and we'll be back after these messages. And welcome back to the show. I have another question from a listener who is dealing with panic attacks. And she says she is having anywhere from 2 to 3 every day. That she's having 3 to 4 every day, and asks what she can do to get rid of them. And panic attacks, they can be so incredibly painful. As I mentioned earlier, I dealt with panic attacks for a number of years, and I get questions about panic attacks all of the time and people who are dealing with them. So first, I want to acknowledge that when I work with women who are dealing with panic attacks, they usually have a lot of shame, and they ask things like, what's wrong with me, or what did I do wrong? And this has a lot to do with, I think, the stigma that still surrounds anxiety and panic. Like, is it something I'm thinking wrong, they might think or say. Maybe I can control my thoughts and get out of it. Maybe I need to expose myself to the stressful situation and just push through it. And I guess I've seen that work for some people, but in general, they're still anxious down the road, and they still have other issues once the panic attacks resolve. So my answer to this question would be, first step is to live a more conscious life, like we talked about earlier. In particular, be more conscious of what you are ingesting. Did you know that MSG can cause panic attacks in some people? So this person, I responded to the question just to get a little bit more information, and that's why I bring this up, because I get a sense that there's a lot of fast food, a lot of packaged food going on, and it seems that when time got tight and nutrition changed for this family, that's when panic arose, or it seems like maybe 6 months later. And what is MSG? So MSG is a flavor enhancer. It's very, very commonly added to our food, and it kind of tricks our brain into thinking that food tastes good when it actually does not. So the majority of our food contains MSG. Again, please read the ingredient labels. Just Google something like sneaky names for MSG, and stay away from things like natural flavors. Companies add that to food, to a lot of our packaged food. So be very, very careful. Especially if you're having panic attacks, you should work with a professional who understands the body and the mind connection, who can help you work through your anxiety and your symptoms, to talk through it and maybe give you some homework assignments that allow you to work on your behavior, your thoughts, what you're eating, your lifestyle, someone who collects a full history of all of those different factors. And most people know, like we talked about earlier, to stay away from caffeine, stay away from alcohol. If you have anxiety, try to stay away from sugar as best you can, and dairy too. You may want to, or you might consider bringing in some calming herbs. There's so many different herbs that can relax the mind. They can relax the nervous system. Things like chamomile. There's holy basil. There's ashwagandha. I know that's kind of a mouthful, but that's one of my favorite herbs. I hope this year to bring a couple of herbal experts on the show to talk about anxiety, because there's so many amazing herbs that we can all afford to learn about and bring into our lives. There are herbs that help with insomnia. Some of these herbs, they work almost instantaneously. There's one herb that's my favorite that I've been using for years to help with sleep, and it's called valerian root. And very surprisingly, you can get valerian root almost anywhere. I've bought it from Walmart. I've bought it from different drugstores and department stores. It's surprisingly all over the place. But that will work within 20 to 30 minutes. If you're someone who hasn't slept for a long time, try bringing that in and just take a little bit the first time, work it up a little bit more, see what your body can tolerate. And that's a great herb for sleep. Then there are other herbs that you can bring into your life, and you can take them in capsule form. You can take them in drink them in a tea, and they will help with insomnia in the long term. So it might not work right away in making you tired and fall asleep, but it will help you deal with insomnia in a couple weeks or a couple months. You'll notice that those types of symptoms just go away. And all of these herbs help to heal your body and mind. So we'll be talking about that a lot more in the future. But again, this is your show. I'm here to help you in your journey to good mental health. If there are topics that you want to hear, please let me know. Just email me at lindsay@aumgoddess.com. Again, that's LINDSAY @AUMGODDESS.com. Maybe put in the subject line topic idea or something like that, and I will do my very best to form shows around what you want. And I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for listening to my story and letting me share with you some tips and some tricks for gaining relief from anxiety. Thank you for submitting your questions ahead of time. Please send your questions into my email. Please post them on Facebook if you feel comfortable doing so. Remember overall, you're beautiful. Your body and your mind want you to be well. You deserve to be well in every way and to live a calm, conscious life with clarity. I will do all that I can to bring you the best information to help you improve your mental health. Tune in the first Friday of every month. And again, next month we have a very special guest. He's well known in the alternative health world. I'm so excited to have him on the show. He is an expert on anxiety and natural solutions, and he will be talking about his brand new stress course. So please join in for that. And don't forget the superfoods that we talked about earlier. Anxiety eliminating superfoods. They are incredible for improving mood and cognition. Earlier, I think I mentioned spirulina. That's spirulina. And you can find that, you can find it online, you can find it at your local health food store. It's very, very popular. It comes in a powder, it comes in a capsule. You know, if you're someone who doesn't like to drink powders or you don't like the flavor, that is an excellent way to bring in protein, plant-based iron, things like that. Get rid of those artificial iron pills and just get your iron from plants. I mean, it's so much better that way. And I even sneak spirulina into my kid's juice cup every morning. He doesn't taste a thing. I mean, I've been feeding it to him since he was a baby, but he's never made a face or anything. So that's a really good thing, is that when you start changing your diet, you can introduce new things to your family. So I hope you took a few things away from this show. Thank you for being here, for tuning in, and for supporting me in my mission to help women with anxiety. It's near and dear to my heart. I hope that together we can make some very, very big changes on this show, and I will see you next time. Take care, everyone.
Dr. Lindsay Ganem here, and I was wondering, do you deal with stress or anxiety? You know, anxiety really is just a word that we use to describe an entire host of possible symptoms. In fact, most of my clients deal with physical symptoms that they just can't seem to get past. I myself dealt with anxiety and annoying physical symptoms for years. So be sure to check out my website and read my story on how I learned to heal my body and mind at omgoddess.com. That's AUMGODDESS.com.
Uplifting Talk. HealthyLife.net.